Okay, here we are in Soho, London, at the very refined Groucho Club.
Yes.
I'm here with Doc and Tommy from Bad Wolves.
Hello. What's up?
Good to meet you both. And
Great to meet you.
your name's just come to the forefront all of a sudden with this new single, your second single, I believe, which is a cover version of the Cranberries' Zombies.
Yes.
That's like Zombie, I should say.
Yes.
And what was the reason behind doing a cover version in the first place?
Well, I would say that when John and I were working on the demos, our drummer, I basically was kind of doing the same thing every day. I kind of had this schedule where I was like going to this cafe in Venice, California, and writing, and go to the gym, and then go to the studio and record what I wrote that morning. And one particular morning in late 2016, Zombie was on the playlist in the cafe, and I reconnected with it. And I was a fan of the band in the 90s when I was a kid and never really knew the meaning of the song.
Because it's very dark lyrics, isn't it? It's a better political thing, yeah.
Yeah, very. I mean, I think when I was a kid, in 93, 94, I assumed that it was about Desert Storm, and I had family members. You know, my father's is Marine, my uncle's Marine. I have cousins in the military, so I just assumed that was what it was about. And then as an adult, like I kind of, in this cafe, I went down a Google kind of hole and read some interviews and watched some interviews, read some articles, and came to find out it was about the bombing, the IRA bombing in Warrington, and also the 1916 reference to Easter Rising, and just kind of, it was very interesting to me what the message that Dolores had kind of encapsulated about humanity's struggle, and collateral damage and the violence that's kind of the byproduct of all these problems that we have. And we were amidst kind of the presidential election, and then there's been in the United States it's just been a kind of an onslaught of negative news stuff that's going on with either police shootings or mass shootings, and it just felt like the song it felt like the song fit the kind of theme of the rest of the album. So I went to the guys and I was like, dudes, we gotta, I really want to do this song, and it's a Cranberry song, and everyone was like, what song? I'm like, dude, Zombie, like, check it out. And everyone's like, oh yeah, like, oh man, this song is great, this is heavy. And that was it. We kind of went into the studio with Philip Naslund, who's a Swedish producer out of Los Angeles, and the rest was history.
And obviously, Dolores got to hear the song herself. How did she get to hear the song? Did you send it to her? Or?
Actually, the gentleman right there, Dan Waite, is responsible. I think in December I was out on tour doing press and kind of hanging with Five Finger Death Punch, and Ivan invited me on stage to sing at Wembley Arena. And I was actually at Winter Wonderland with a friend of mine, and so we came over, and then Dan and I met, and we talked for about 2 hours, and he had mentioned that he had heard the song, the cover, which at that point we weren't sure would make the record. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of asked, almost like a kid asking for parental consent, if he would send it to Dolores, and to see if she would give it a thumbs up. And then, I went home to the States for the holidays. A couple days later, Dan called me and he was like, Dolores loves the song, she thinks it's amazing, and she wants to sing on it. And I was like, what? No way. And I told them, and they didn't even believe me. It was like none of us believed it.
Because I think a lot of people think of the Cranberries as some sort of pop band, but they're not. They can rock with the best of them. I saw them live in concert last year myself.
Salvation is a punk rock song.
Yeah.
It's like straight punk rock song. If you just like kind of change the amplification of it, it's. So they're a rock band, and that's kind of how it went. That's kind of how we got in touch with her.
And sadly, the day before she passed away, you were due to meet her. Record the vocals. Were you due to meet her, or was
I wasn't flying here. I had work, so I was back in the States. And she was here in London, and Dan was meant to pick her up, and they were supposed to go straight to the studio, and unfortunately. It never got to happen. She tragically passed away, and it was a very emotional phone call. The night before, Dan had kind of sent me her voice messages of how excited she was to record. And I went to bed that night thinking like I would wake up the next day and like one of my childhood dreams would have come true. And the exact opposite happened. And it's still, I think that the band and we've been processing it. It's very heavy, you know.
I suppose if there's any good comfort to come out of this, in some ways you're going to immortalise that song even longer, because you're bringing it to a whole new army of rock fans.
Yeah, I mean, that feels good. You know, I don't know. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, well, I think in a lot of ways, this is often happens when there's a cover song, right? So let's look at something like we were playing, like Hurt, which was a Nine Inch Nails song, and Johnny Cash covered it. And in a lot of ways, it redefines the song, right, to a different generation. But it also, anytime that happens, it always speaks to the power of the original and its ability to have, a universal message, right, that can translate in different generations. And I think with the way we did the cover, kind of the timbre of Tommy's voice, the big guitars, the heavy drums, it kind of takes something that is completely brilliant, but then adds this extra spin on it. And the truth is, when you look at the numbers, the fact that it went number 1 on iTunes and it's climbing up the Billboard charts, that's pretty much, we put it out there, and the people are kind of voting with their money and with their time by watching and spreading. That's the amazing thing, is the way people are sharing it around.
It's great what you've done, because all the proceeds are going to her children.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is a very kind thing to do.
It's not, to me, it's not even kind. It's just the only thing.
It was the only thing to do. Basically, if we didn't come up with that plan, the record would have got shelved and no one would have ever saw it or heard it. You know, and obviously Dan being a family friend, and Alan Kovac, who owns our label, he managed the Cranberries during much of the height of their success. So, you know, when we all this happened and we kind of all had a meeting to decide what to do with the song, this was ultimately the best idea. And it was kind of from an artistic integrity and from the label integrity, it was the only way to do it right, you know, and to turn the song into a tribute to her legacy, to her songwriting, and to the kind of artist that she was.
Definitely. Because they're well worth checking out their back catalogue. Anyone new to the Cranberries, check them out, because there's a lot of great songs there.
There's tons of hits.
And has it amazed you how popular your version has become? I believe it's like 14 million views on YouTube already after 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think it's 14 million on YouTube. It's like 18 or 19 million on Facebook. I mean, it's you know, it's jarring. It's hard to kind of wrap our heads around.
Yeah, it's like the thing where we just start, especially now because we're in the social media age and we're pretty accessible, and you hear from childhood friends, you hear from ex-girlfriends that all of a sudden want to talk to you again. It's I think it's very overwhelming, but you know, I'm happy now that we're kind of in the midst of the activity, like just coming here, doing this press tour. We have shows coming up, rehearsing with the band. Because that allows us to focus on really what our job is, which is to play and connect with people, as opposed to kind of thinking about these big numbers, which we're distant.
And obviously, because of this, the name Bad Wolves is out there to a lot of people now.
Yeah.
I don't be too aware of the band itself yet. So tell us more about the band Bad Wolves and the genre of music.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting is how, with the song doing as much as it's doing, we're a heavy metal band. We all come from a heavy metal background. Doc, is a founder of God Forbid, Berkland of Devil Driver. I've been in punk rock band Snot. I did a 10-year with Snot. I did Divine Heresy with ex-Fear Factory members and Mormon Angel members. And Kyle's been with in Scar the Martyr and Vimic with Joey, who used to play for Slipknot in this moment. And Chris comes from playing with bands like Bury Your Dead, and so we're kind of all these like heavy metal lifers, and the record is kind of conducive to that. There are songs that walk the line in the rock world, and I think from a melodic standpoint, this record is more interesting and more challenging than anything I've done, because we've got to because the band and the instrumentation was very experimental in the way that they approached the songwriting. It gave me almost more freedom to kind of pull from influences that I've never really been able to do, because it's not a traditional metal record. And ultimately, I think we came up with something fresh and new.
Yeah.
And just before we talk about even further about the new album, Disobey, last year you was moonlighting with another band, Five Finger Death Punch. You stood in for Ivan Moody when he fell off the wagon, as we say. How much of a learning curve was that for you? Because obviously a much bigger level, a big arena band, you were doing festivals.
I mean, I think that in that circumstance, my responsibility was to to do the best job that I could, giving the Death Punch fans the show that Ivan would have, which is kind of a daunting task, because he's such a formidable frontman and he's such a massive talent and so charismatic on stage. But ultimately, it was an interesting experience. I love Ivan; he's my friend, and so I really respect the lengths that he had gone to better himself as a man and as a business partner and a singer and a father. And he's a really, really interesting guy, and I actually commend those actions. There's a lot of times where in the music industry, people are struggling and they're suffering silently, and they keep getting pushed on stage to perform, and then we have tragedies that we've seen before that I won't mention.
Yeah, it's been a lot recently, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's I think that's it was amazing to be part of a story of hope and courage and strength.
And did you give any advice to Ivan yourself? Because you've been 8 years sober yourself, I believe.
Yeah, I mean we roll together pretty tight, so
Yeah.
he'll hit me up, we'll hit each other up, and
So let's talk about the new album, Disobey. It's out on May the 18th from 11/7 Music.
Well, that got moved up to May 11th.
Yeah.
Oh, May 11th. Good. Well, great. We can't wait for it. Exactly. And, but you touched on subjects, sort of anti-establishment, like the first song, "Officer Down." That can be quite a controversial title.
Yeah. I mean, if taken out of context, I mean the basis for the song is that we're not anti-law enforcement, but we are for policy change. And the song really kind of touches down about some of the police shootings from, Philando Castile, and kind of how, we're living in an age where the internet, people are able to access immediately these kinds of transgressions. And then in the second verse, it goes into talking about the Dallas shooting with the lone shooter who started to assassinate police officers, and the kind of treatment for the video is very interesting. I'm hoping we get to actually bring it to fruition. But at the end of the day, it's a life is a life, and instead of people fighting each other on both sides, there really needs to be a focus on the issue at hand in order for policy to change, for people to stop dying.
You also sort of touched on religion with Jesus Slaves. Good play on words. Can you tell us more about that song?
Yeah, I mean that song's actually like more of a relationship song, and it kind of uses religious and classic horror connotations in it to kind of make the song more ambiguous. The song is really about the way that I envision it is two people who are in love with each other, and one of them's a werewolf, and the other one wants to be what the other one is, but they're not. But the person who's afflicted is saying, "You don't want to be a part of this, and I'm not going to drag you into this." And it's almost the same how love is a religion too, where we it's like people do crazy things because of they believe. And so that's kind of how that works.
And just before I wrap this up, I must mention my favourite song on the album is "Remember When." It's sort of like Linkin Park kind of sound, if you don't mind me saying that.
It is. I mean, there's definitely like this record has allowed me to infuse more hip hop influences. I'm from Brooklyn. We're African American, guys, so, and we love all kinds of music. The song is kind of a narration of a story of me and my twin brother. My twin brother's currently serving 17 years in prison for attempted murder. He almost killed me in 2010.
Wow.
Yeah, so I got sober. My brother stayed addicted to drugs, and he fractured my skull with a crowbar during a home invasion.
And what's your relationship with your brother now?
It is what it is. I mean, he's serving his time, and I kind of I dedicated my life to kind of sober companionship over kind of in a way to help me self-heal. So every time that I work with a family or I work with a person and help them get clean and start to rebuild their own life, it helps my heart heal because I was never able to save my brother, you know, and so it's a very vulnerable song and a very real song, but I feel like it's kind of important to use this platform to talk about because as like a public speaker and someone who works in this field, I know that when I put myself out there, it gives other people, subconsciously gives them the opportunity to relate and say, oh, I'm not the only one.
It's sort of a bit like going back to what I said earlier, about turning a negative into a positive.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what we're about.
Yeah, one thing I would say about that song, I think it was a real breakthrough because it was one of the last songs written, and so much of the other the record is symbolic and metaphor. I think, you know, even the rest of the band understanding that something it's a true story, it's direct, it's not about, you know, something amorphous, it's speaking directly to a story that's unique to his life, and, you know, and I'm hoping with the next record there's more stuff like that because it connects people to him as a person, which is pretty incredible.
Well, great. Well, the album Disobey is out on May the 11th now on 11/7 Music, and we hope to see you on the road very soon.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Tommy, Padwell, it's been great talking to you. All the best for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Awesome.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.